pivoting. So we'll go through this very fast because I do want to get to more of your questions. And so Greener, you may know Greener, they had a pivot. They were originally called Green Wallet and they moved to Greener. And they shifted their who pays. And there's this great quote, they did a lot of pilot runs and they talked to a lot of their customers and they found that the customer wants to feel good about being green, but they didn't want to pay for it. So their first version was that the customer was paying for the product. The second version, because they realized after looking at the data that the customer actually didn't want to pay for the product, then they moved to charging businesses. So they're rewarding customers when they shop from sustainable businesses, and those businesses pay a small commission to Greener. Then Greener will use that revenue to plant trees and then reinvest that into the company. Yeah, they came through WWF's Impact Challenge. Great company. Yeah, you should hopefully, we can share you some links so you can follow their story. But I just want to show you that like it's a very normal, natural thing to pivot. So a pivot means changing your customer, your business model, your solution. It doesn't mean throwing the baby out with the bathwater and starting again. That would be the definition of starting a new business. So it's just changing little levers of your product or your service to make it more desirable. And so changing the solution constantly is normal. Don't feel bad about this, especially in early stages. You want to be testing your assumptions over and over again quickly. And if you're not, you're likely doing it wrong or not fast enough. And the later you try to find that perfect version of your product or what your customers want, the harder it's going to be. So, and there is a huge opportunity cost if you are sticking with something that's not working. If you do have evidence that it's not working, you should consider a pivot ASAP, and we'll show you some signs of that. Some signs is if the audience is not accessible, if you find it really hard to access your audience, if they're too expensive to reach, you can't even sit down for a coffee with them, you can't reach them, you can't talk to them, that's going to be a very expensive audience to do business with. If your business is not growing, it's been stagnant or it's been on the decline, maybe it's time to consider a pivot. If people aren't willing to pay, so Greener is a great example of that. People weren't willing to pay, so then it's like, let's change our customer, or let's, maybe change our business model. Maybe you find it's not a good fit to be working on the idea. Maybe you have a lack of passion, or if you have to rely on a lot of external factors that are out of your control. So, for example, let's say your business is totally dependent on supply chain. And then there's supply chain issues all out of your control, and maybe that's too risky or too hard or too expensive. So reasons not to pivot: if you're running away from doing hard work, not a good idea to pivot. You should just kind of double down and just do more work. I have been in this situation many times. Sometimes things get really hard or painful or scary, and you think maybe I should just pivot, but actually probably 9 times out of 10, the right solution is just to double down on what you're doing. And so if you repeatedly change ideas and give up before launching, that's not a good reason to pivot. You should just launch and see how it goes. You read something on the internet about a hot new trend, not a good reason to pivot. Okay, so people usually take too long to pivot, and that's because of loss aversion. They don't want to commit to the loss or realize the loss. They have this fear of being wrong. They don't want to show weakness. They have a little bit of traction, which is kind of the biggest evil, because you're like, is it, will the customers come, or am I just a little bit late to the party? Or are they, have they just not come yet? So that's really hard when you've got a little bit of traction. I was in that stage for a long time, and it's really hard. It feels like you're wrong. And so, do you just keep going and keep committing to the path, or do you pivot? It's really hard to know. People are too nice, and we confuse politeness with traction. We talked a lot about that in the stakeholder interview workshop. Or people blame their customers for not being ready fast enough. So it's like, I've created this great product, but why are the customers not seeing the value? It's the customer's fault. Okay, so watch out for a little bit of traction. That can be the hardest thing, to be honest, because yeah, you think you've got something, but you don't know if it's enough. You have to keep raising funds to get you through all the little chasms that you're finding. It's really, really hard. You decide if and when to pivot. That's all on you. I mean, you should be listening to your customers. They will probably tell you, or they will hint at you. You know, say with Greener, you know, they did lots of data, or like they obtained lots of data in customer interviews, and the customer said, you know, I think it's a big problem for me. I want to be green, but I don't want to pay for it. Or they saw that in their data. So they made the decision to pivot. So yes, listen to your customers and your data. Find something that excites you and your team. You want an honest assessment of you and your team's strengths and weaknesses that will help you find a better solution, business model, customer or audience. Find something that's quick to be validated so you can get some traction runs on the board. Okay, best times to pivot. You know, you can read all this. I think I'm getting the time's up kind of vibes from Annie. Find the happy medium. In summary, all these great things. We can send you all these slides. These are kind of reading slides, so you can easily just read them.